Welcome to Life Experiences with William Pelarenos right here at WRMN 1410 AM. And here we are. This is our Valentine's Day broadcast. Candies and balloons and packages with gifts and flowers. And last year on our broadcast for Valentine's Day, we brought on a family lawyer that talked about the flip side of Valentine's Day, and it turns out that nearly 50% of our marriages in the United States end up in divorce court. So Bree asked her to come back because we had some questions since then. She was on our Sweetest Day show, and now she's back for the 2026 Valentine's Day show. Welcome back, Debbie Cohen.
Hi, I am so happy to be here. Hi, Bill. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here again, and especially on Valentine's Day.
Since last you were here, a lot of things have happened. And one of the incidents that happened was the Coldplay Kiss Cam scandal that showed an executive of a company with his HR supervisor in a very provocative position at a concert, and this led to a scandal with the company, and it really brought to light, what can I say, workplace romances. And I got a lot of questions on it. When I did an internet search, it turns out Forbes magazine has said that one of their surveys showed that nearly 60% of people have engaged in workplace romances.
I could believe it. The workplace is very incestual, and I'm kind of surprised at the 60%. That is higher than I thought it would be.
I will verify it. I have the article here.
I believe you. And
whether it's 60% or 50%, I understand how these things happen, and we've seen them on television shows. I was recently talking to you about an episode of Doc on Fox 32, and in that, doctors at a hospital are involved in relationships. It happens at hospitals. It happens at police departments. It happens on Wall Street. It happens in insurance companies, and some of it, if it's just two people that have a romance, I mean, it may be, it may turn out to be productive for them. But the problem is, if one or both parties are married, that's when you run into situations of adultery. And that has led to divorce cases. And you've handled quite a few of them in the last few years because your practice, family law, is focused on divorce, child custody, child support payments, orders of protection.
Absolutely.
So let's start with workplace romances. What's your take on this?
With the workplace romances, I completely agree. Even in employment situations I've been in throughout my career, working with the government, working with, the state's attorney, everything, it happens everywhere. And it's just you're spending more time at work than you are at the home. And so people form relationships and they form bonds with other people. And the messy part comes to when people come to me at the point of that they found out that their spouse is having an extramarital affair at their workplace, or on the flip side, that they got busted for it. And so I help people on both ends of the spectrum, but it is a messy situation and could be a very hostile situation as well.
When this gets out, like it did with the Coldplay scandal, they ended up resigning, the two individuals involved. But it also, and very surprisingly, it reflected bad in the company. And I had read that their stock was going down. I personally don't think that's fair to the company because the company's producing a product. If there's no problem with the product and their employees' conduct did not affect that product that they put out, I don't see why stock should go down or anything else, but there is a knee-jerk reaction, correct?
Absolutely. And everything with the company in which something like that with the Coldplay, with the CEO and that company, everything came back. And because they were such higher ups in the company as well, even though it doesn't have to do with the products per se, they're a reflection on the values of the company. And so people really take values to heart. And so discovery of such a situation, an extramarital situation, a romance in the work job, can affect a company overall. It affects the people, their individual reputations moving forward in their employment. And in their futures. It plays in every little bit of part of everything, just because it creates such a toxic situation. Excuse me.
As we go forward, I forgot our phone lines are open if anybody's got questions.
Yes,
Matthew?
847-931-1410, or you can also text us at 505-926-1410.
Yes. Okay. Now, here's a question I got for you. When people go through a divorce, there's a lot of reasons for divorce. But if adultery is involved, does that make a difference in the case?
So in Illinois, I'm only speaking about Illinois law, we are a no-fault state. So it makes absolutely zero difference within the parameters of why somebody can file for divorce or how they will fare better or worse in a divorce. The one thing it can affect, though, is something called dissipation, which is if one party is spending marital funds on this outside extramarital situation, and they're using marital funds on another person, the spouse that found out about the cheating relationship can go in and do an investigation and find out what sort of funds were utilized out for this outside portion of the marriage and claim an interest and be credited with that back. And that, depending on the situations and the financial situations of the clients, that could range from a few $100s to hundreds, if not millions of dollars.
So in the financial aspect is where the casualty comes in.
A huge. And also it does come into play with people's reputations. And although, again, it doesn't play out with the overall divorce, it can affect significantly a person who is being, an allegation is being made against that person, especially if they are higher up in the workplace.
You know, it's funny. I got to mention, just in Illinois, adultery used to be a crime. You're aware of this?
Yes.
Up until 25 years ago, I had read some South suburban town got involved in some domestic dispute, and they went there, and it was a result of adultery, and they charged the people with adultery. And me, I was a policeman for decades. I go, I didn't even know this law was on the books. Yeah. But after that, there was a knee-jerk reaction, and the Illinois legislature repealed that law. But I'm sure some states may still have it on the books.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with the other states.
Another thing we don't have in the books in Illinois that other states do, I believe, is people that interfere with marriages can be sued for alienation of affection.
Oh.
We used to have that in Illinois.
I did not know that.
Many years ago, there was a lawsuit, and I vaguely remember, but it no longer is a factor in Illinois courts. And you see, I understand, because there's millions of people out there. Do you really have to go after a married person? You know, come on.
I know,
Yeah.
but people.
Now, if you didn't know they were married,
wrapped up in the excitement of it,
the excitement, the passion,
and
the suspense,
and the sneaking, and the that it's a hidden little gem of this person's life, and people. It really brings out a different side to a lot of people.
Now, some people are deceptive, and I'd like to do this in a future show. These online. What do you call it? Dating services.
Yeah.
A lot of people are married and they don't disclose that in their profile.
There are so many married people on these dating websites. It's really insane. And I have a little passion of watching on Instagram videos of husbands or wives busting their spouse when they find their online profile. It's pretty disheartening.
I know, but you know what? Here's the bottom line. And I as a policeman, I won't, and we'll get back to the legal aspect. I went to a lot of domestic disputes, and some of them was couples, others was married couples that had a relationship with somebody else. You can't stop somebody from cheating. Why bother grabbing their phone? And, if somebody has the intent to cheat, you can't stop them. Just like if somebody has the intent to rob a bank, they're going to do it. You can't stop them, you know, and that's the way it comes down to. You can't stop something that wants to leave. So the best thing is you just take the recourse. You end up in, is it still called divorce court or family court?
They call it domestic relations court.
Oh, very good.
Big fancy term.
Very good. And somebody, do you have some more notes as we go through here? What was, I read something that the Bill Gates or some was involved.
Oh, yes. Okay. So, so I kind of prepared some fun stories about some larger cases with very well-known people with very large estates, and just the shocking portion of it about how their divorces blew up and how these people that had millions, if not billions of dollars, went into marriages with that, you know, some of that money, knowing that they had that money without prenuptials, which is a huge thing, without postnuptials. And just that these divorces became this front gate of showing that, you know, you have somebody who has all the money in the world and they still will be feeling the hurt of a divorce if they don't, you know, protect themselves correctly. And if also they're caught cheating or other things come about it. Because again, even though the cheating doesn't create the reason for the divorce, meaning that a party has to prove that to obtain a divorce, it really can affect the outcome of the settlement of what occurs in these types of cases.
And for no matter if you're a millionaire or you just own a house, it can be financially devastating to one or both parties.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, just because somebody is having an affair doesn't mean that the other party is going to have a hand up in the financial, but it just could really be used. And especially, and I guess I'm making, you know, suggestions about these higher net worth cases, like you have Bill Gates, you had Tiger Woods, you had all these other people that really were, again, just doing things where their divorces led to their spouses getting huge settlements based upon their reputations and their businesses and everything like that. The spouses really made out well.
I'm familiar with the Tiger Woods case because that ended up in a domestic violence case where I think he was attacked by his spouse at the time, and then it just went downhill from there.
Yeah.
But, you know, people got to understand in these, whether it's a relationship or a marriage, emotions run high, passions run high, people get upset. And I've seen many videos, not only on the internet, as a policeman when cell phone cameras were first coming out, and the guy says, look how she came after me, and I stayed away from her. And women can be just as rough as male physical abusers.
Absolutely. I think in the Tiger Woods, I think she chased him with a golf club.
I was going to say that, but
I think it was.
Oh,
yes, wow. It was tough. But what was the Bill Gates? Why was that so wild, the divorce there?
Because the couple in Bill Gates, he was married to Melinda French Gates, and they were such a complex divorce because they were financial partners as well. Oh. And so there was so much to it. And they were married for 27 years, and the estate was worth $130 billion. And the thing that really came out of this was that the trust is broken when a partner finds out. Like, and when I say a partner, I'm talking about in the domestic fashion with your husband or your wife, but the trust breaks down. So the trust then went and disappeared for the business aspects as well in his situation. And although the affair didn't cause the divorce, it created such an emotional aspect of it. And this is a prime example how emotional betrayal drives the timing and the terms of a divorce and the settlement based on all of the emotions that come out of it. And I always say infidelity doesn't end a marriage, but it ends the illusion of the safety inside of the marriage. So people, when they find out there's infidelity, they completely flip the switch when they actually digest it, and where they may have done things and tried to end things in a way where in a situation where you're getting a divorce and things were going to come to settlement, now the spouse that was cheated on is on high alert, and everything typically is so much harder because they're questioning everything. They don't trust anything. They don't trust the bank accounts. They don't trust the records. They think there's hidden assets all of a sudden. And a lot of times there are.
And you know what? They could get not only financially, but also emotionally devastating. But there's a flip side to this. And through my experience as a policeman, I have known couples that infidelity happened to fall into their relationship and they've survived it. What a lot of couples have not survived, though, one of the major factors for divorce, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I know from my life experience, is when couples have great financial difficulties. One spouse has spent too much money, put them in debt. It just leads to devastation and to divorce court because financial or money problems are something that cannot be overcome easily if one partner is not helping the other partner.
Absolutely. And that's another heartbreaking portion of when I'm handling divorces and one spouse has created a ridiculous amount of debt and it's considered a lot, and not always, but a lot of times it's considered marital debt. So you're in it as a team and people don't realize that marriage, besides the romantic portion of it, is a contract. And it's a contract that ties your finances as well as your debts and your liabilities. And it's really unfortunate because it is a cause of the demise of so many relationships when one party is outrageously spending, whether it's on shopping or gambling or,
Yes.
drugs, alcohol, you could go to any area, prostitution, anything. Again, we could go after for sometimes dissipation on those claims, but it's devastating.
I have a friend, great guy, very successful entrepreneur, but I watched him on these video poker machines. One night I'm just sitting there next to him, just talking to him. He put $1,300 into the machine.
Yep.
$1,300.
Yeah.
My round trip to Florida, first class, was only $777. $1,300 in maybe 5 minutes.
No.
Yeah, but I also know another couple, an elderly couple, that the wife found out that the husband had dropped over 30 G's at the casino. And what she had, we should do a gambling problem program. She had him blacklisted from the casinos. So when you walk into the casino, they scan your ID. Oh, no, you're not allowed.
I have heard of that. And recently that's come up in one of my cases too. Where,
Oh, really?
Where the spouse is asking for something like that. Yes.
Because, you work hard for this money. All of a sudden it's gone because of a gambling addiction or an alcohol addiction or a drug addiction. I mean, it devastates the whole relationship and the household.
Absolutely. And I have, situations where I've had a client who was funding her husband's not a gambling problem. And I wouldn't say she was funding it, but she was funding the marriage and the house, knowing he had this gambling issue. And in the end, she's still in debt. There's all this debt. And I think she was just hopeful he would change his ways. And it's really sad. Especially when somebody tries so hard to help the other person. But it could be devastating. And like you said, a few $100s could be gone in a second.
$1,300.
Yeah, that's crazy.
$1,300.
Yeah, that's
a lot of money.
It's a ton of money.
That's 13 dinners at Fogo de Chao.
Yeah.
With the tip and the drinks.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So how much time we got left? 1 minute?
We got 2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes.
Yep.
So while we got Debbie here, she's going to be here for the second half. Let's go to her webpage, Cohen Family Law, right?
Yeah, CohenFamilyLawyer.com.
There you go. And you were made a super lawyer. real quickly in this last minute and a half, what is a super lawyer?
A super lawyer. Wow. Thank you. I'm so proud of myself. A super lawyer is basically, it's a distinguished honor by the super lawyers for the top 5% of attorneys in their field in the state. So only 5% of attorneys reach and have this nomination and also receive the classification of a super lawyer. And I am psyched. This is my second year in a row that I have been named a super lawyer. And it's also it's by my peers that vote me in, not people. So it's not online reviews. It's not my clients. It's literally the field and the colleagues I have in the field that are voting for me and saying that they respect me and believe I should have this honor.
So it's like the Academy Awards where directors only vote for directors and actors vote for actors, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So this is the Academy Awards of the law firms.
Correct. And then super lawyers does its own internal review, and there's a whole process to it. But yes.
All right. We'll talk about this in the second half. Join us. And if you're giving out presents, get some Valentine's presents going this weekend. If you end up in divorce court, call CohenFamilyLaw.com.
CohenFamilyLawyer.com.
Oh, CohenFamilyLawyer.com. Sorry. We'll get back to that on our second half. Phone lines are open. Thank you. Stay with us.
Thank you.
Well, happy Valentine's Day weekend, everybody. And this is the second half of our Valentine's Day show. And our returning guest is family law attorney Debbie Cohen from, what's your website?
CohenFamilyLawyer.com.
CohenFamilyLawyer.com. I didn't want to mess it up. And if you saw the first half real quickly, Debbie's been inducted into the Lawyers Hall of Fame called Super Lawyer.
Super lawyer.
That means she does a super job. So with that being said, we were talking about famous divorce cases and not so famous divorce cases. And the average person that goes through a divorce, many people have pets. And I know pets are considered property when a divorce happens, but people, both the male, the female, the husband, the wife, they're mostly both attached to the dog or the cat or whatever the pet is, correct? So now that becomes an issue in some divorces. So you want to elaborate a little bit?
Absolutely. Pets are one of the biggest things that comes up so often in a divorce because in Illinois, pets are considered property. They're not considered children. So when a client or potential client calls and is asking, well, what's going to happen with my dog or my cat? It's been, I'm the main caretaker, I'm this or that. The first thing I always have to explain is that the pet is considered under Illinois property. And a judge cannot enforce any sort of visitation or parenting plan for the pet. That could come by agreement. The one great thing, though, about Illinois is recently the statute changed, and the judges can look to see that the pets are considered more than just items. The judges look to what is the best well-being of the pet and who does that go to. So we look at things, who takes the dog or the cat to the vet, who takes, sleeps with the cat, who takes the dog for walks. If there's children involved, if children are going to be living at one person's house, you might have a better argument of the parent that's staying with the kids for the majority of time, that the pets stay in the house with the children. But it is such a hard thing when people are fighting over pets because there really is no hard, fast rule about where the pet should go.
It comes down to each client's lawyer's individual argument, how that pet affects their clients, correct?
Correct.
Correct. So the arguments are made in court, just like a criminal court, and this is family court. So it can get intense in the courtroom, and there's back and forth between the attorneys, correct?
Absolutely, yeah, and besides the arguments, documentation also comes into play hugely, like receipts. So if you are paying the receipts for the pet food, if you're paying the receipts or you have the receipts for the vet, and you're the person taking the animal to the vet, the documentation really enhances our argument for that parent to maintain the pet. And I had this crazy wild case, Bill, years and years ago, where it was a couple that was not even married, but the entire fight was about the dog. And they spent tens of thousands of dollars fighting over the dog.
There's an emotional attachment.
Yeah. And this was before the law changed, actually. But it was crazy. Yeah.
Real quickly before we go to the next subject, I knew a guy, he was getting married, and he had a nice dog. I mean, I love this dog. Real friendly, pet friendly. He never barked unless he needed to go out. So when he had to go to the bathroom, he barked. You knew to take him for a walk. This was such a nice dog, and he asked me if I wanted his dog. Now, I can't because my wife has allergies to dogs as well as my daughter. So I go, hey, what's wrong with the dog? Nothing. I'm getting married. My wife's allergic. I go, my wife's got the same problem. He gives away the dog to a nice family. The dog adjusted. Everything worked out nicely. I see him 3 years later. He's going through divorce. He goes, I should have kept the dog and not got married. He can't get the dog back because it's been with the new family, and his marriage is down the toilet.
That sucks.
Bad decision.
Bad. That is it.
All right, so let's go with, is there anything else about pets?
No, I mean, just if you're preparing, if you're preparing to go through a divorce and you do have a pet, things you should start gathering documentation and look at who primarily feeds and walks the pet, who takes the pet to the vet, like I said earlier, who might have a better stable situation, living situation, such as if one person is at home working all the time or is at home more often and one party is always traveling, that could come into play. And so it's just the hard thing, again, to express to people that loving the animal is just not enough and saying, I love the animal more than the other party, because that is not how it's determined if there is fighting about the pet in the courtroom. So it's not like child custody. Just be wary of it. And also, if you haven't been married, you could also place your pet into a prenup.
That's a very good idea.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think it's a great idea, but also if you're coming into the marriage with the pet already, and I'm thinking out loud as I'm saying this, you can make an assumption or a good argument that the pet was already that person's. But if the pet is brand new and they were dating and they haven't been married yet, those are the really good times to put it into a prenup, who the pet would go to.
People don't think about prenuptials when they get married because everything is lovey-dovey, passion's in the air. But like I said, in the United States, it's been plus or minus 5%. It's at the 50% rate. Now, Forbes magazine puts divorce rate in the United States at 46%, but that's close enough to half the nation's getting divorced.
Yeah.
So it's important when you're going into a marriage to think about, again, a prenuptial agreement to protect both assets. And here's another thing. A friend of mine last night, I told him you're going to be my guest, and he was telling me about his divorce. He was only married a couple of years, so he got out of it better than some other people. But he told me he was selling his car that he had before marriage, and his wife tried to make an issue of it. But that was his car he bought prior to the marriage. Once they get married, does that car become community property?
No. So if it was his premarital property prior to the marriage, that still is his premarital property.
Yeah, that was his issue that he made.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to talk to him, too.
Yeah, so premarital property is the stuff you own prior to the marriage, and if your marriage dissolves, it was yours before, it's yours now, it's yours forever.
Yeah.
Let's go. Another friend of mine, he's not in this state, but he asked a question. I know you print out some notes here, but in Illinois, if somebody receives inheritance How does that play out if you're married?
So typically with an inheritance, if you are married and the inheritance is made out to you, not to you and your spouse, it is considered originally non-marital. So non-marital means it's not going, it's not part of the marital estate. However, how you receive the funds or the assets or the property or how you receive it and what you do with it can change it from a non-marital to a marital property. So people are not aware of this when they're in marriages because they're not thinking about it. If everybody, is getting along and there's an inheritance that comes through, a lot of people just say, okay, we're going to put it into our joint bank account. The second that money is put into a joint bank account, it now becomes marital. So if you're not putting it into a separate account under your specific name, you have now just what's called commingled the inheritance into your marital, and your spouse could claim that they get their share of that of that inheritance. Also, if somebody uses the inheritance and puts money down on a house where the couple is going to live, the other spouse could claim that it's now marital, that the entire house value and the equity in the house is marital. If I were representing the person that used the inheritance, I would have them, if I knew them before they did that, I would have them work, prepare documents and a postnuptial and other sorts of things to protect themselves. But you could still make a claim that it was your non-marital that went into the house, but it makes things so much more difficult. And then another thing is keeping track of tracing these funds. So when the inheritance comes in and comes into one spouse and the other spouse is now claiming in a divorce, hey, that was marital, you really have to have your tracking clear. Where did the money go? Where did it move from a joint bank account A to bank account B? Where any of these joint, do not put it into a joint account. And I think people just do not realize that.
And if you have accounts that are in your name and not in your spouse's name, which I've had a bank account, I never closed it for 40 years. And it's just a few $100s in it, but it's only in my name. I always heard it was bad credit to close accounts or to close credit cards. It was a bad credit rating,
Yeah.
So I never closed these accounts. I don't use them that much.
Yeah.
But if you have money that's in your name only, make sure that you have a beneficiary on there in case you die. Am I correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, too, if the bank account, like you said, is in your individual name, if hypothetically an inheritance was placed into your private bank account, the key to having those funds remain your non-marital is you don't use that money from that account to pay for anything marital. So like if you're like, oh, I got some inheritance and it now went into this account and I'm going to pay the mortgage off next month, that could transmute it to that your spouse could now say that that's marital funds because it's being used to pay marital.
Yes, what everybody has to understand is besides all the emotion, the passion that goes with marriages and weddings, it's legally a contract. You're entering in a legal contract. Am I saying that right?
Absolutely.
All right. So with a legal contract, there's ins and outs, that bases that have to be covered in case the marriage dissipates, which it does 50% of the time.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the hardest part too, when somebody is thinking about either getting married or when they're going through a divorce, because emotions are so high in each area. When you're getting married, you're flying high and everything. You don't want to think about the demise of your relationship. But as you said, Bill, divorce is over 50%. I truly, in my view, think it's closer to 60%, but I'm not doing the statistics. But people really need to realize they're going into a business contract. It's a romantic agreement, but it is a business contract. And when they're coming out, as much as they are emotionally hurt and suffering, again, my job and any, family lawyer's job is to protect the client, to make sure, because of the contract they were in, that they're getting their fair share.
Correct. Let me ask you something. Another friend of mine I know a lot of people have been through divorce. It's very, maybe just because I was a policeman for many years, it was very prevalent.
Yeah.
In my police department, at least. Mm-hmm. But one man that went through a divorce, he said it was very amicable. Him and his wife. Can you, as a lawyer, negotiate with the other lawyer prior to going to court?
Absolutely. That's my favorite. And if a couple is able to do that, I strongly urge people to do that. I am a big fan of facilitating four-way Zooms, meaning me, the other side, the other attorney, and then my client and the other client. And we can absolutely get together and collaborate. Like, there's something called collaborative law, where we could try and work out everything before something's even filed. And I truly am a big fan of people not using a lot of their funds, as much as I'm happy to be paid. But if they could work things out through a divorce, save your money for yourself and your kids.
So they send the attorneys back and forth with what each is looking to get out of the marriage, and you guys hammer it out prior to going into in front of a judge, correct?
A lot of times we try to do that, yes.
But to dissolve the divorce, and this may sound like a stupid question, you still have to go in front of the judge, right?
Yeah. And it's not a stupid question at all. Yeah, no, you still have to formally file the petition with the court, and then you have to formally go before the court, and each client has to state to the judge that they're understanding of the agreements that are being entered and that they're entering them freely and voluntarily. Since COVID, we've had a lot of what's called affidavits for what's called a prove up. We submit an affidavit rather than actually even having the parties appear in court. So you could even be divorced without ever stepping foot into a court. And it depends on the court.
Because the affidavit is sworn and notarized, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So with that being said, of course, that makes it a lot simpler instead of couples battling it out. Is there, in Illinois, sometimes you read in other states a marriage was annulled. Does Illinois have annulments?
There is annulments in Illinois. The statute's very clear. I think I don't remember it off the top of my head, but there are ways to have a marriage annulled. One is by fraud or deceit, I believe, is one of the elements that. And again, I don't have the statute in front of me, so I'd rather look at the statute. Okay, but yes, we have annulment, and I actually have had a case where it's been annulled.
I threw it out as the last minute.
No, it's all good.
But it my mind travels in 9 directions, right, Matthew?
Yes.
And when I thought about this, what is the difference between a divorce and annulment?
The difference between the two is an annulment is like it never happened and the marriage never existed. So it's basically saying, rather than a marriage that was, enforced and now is going to be divided and there's a record that you had a marriage, an annulment basically is a way, and I look at it this way, of trying to recreate history and say something doesn't exist that did. So if you're married and it was by, one of the elements that you could prove for annulment, basically there's an annulment order and the parties do not have a history of being married. It's kind of like an expungement.
Yes. Yes. So that would probably help if a party wants to get remarried in their church.
Correct. A lot. This is very significant for religious reasons for several, people of different religions. I find that people want this for religious reasons.
Because getting married, I've known people that go down to the Daily Center to get married. Mm-hmm. And then like my wedding, not only was it a legal document, but I had it in a church. So I understand, and I could be wrong, but the Catholic Church don't allow you to get married twice in their church. I'll have to get a priest there.
I'm not going to be answering. I don't know that one.
But if the marriage is annulled, you might be able to, there might be a caveat where you could sneak it back in and go into your second wedding. But statistically, these second weddings, these second marriages fail at a higher rate than the first time marriage.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. The statistics show that a second marriage has a much higher percentage of not lasting. And then when people get to their third marriage, it's a whole different skyrocketed percentage of not working.
But the people that I know that have gone through second marriages have been smart enough to have prenuptials because they've been dragged through the coals on the first divorce.
I'm very proud of all those people because I can't say that I've had all clients that might be on their second marriage that have signed or executed a prenup where I want to shake them and say, why didn't I know you back then?
Yeah, so you've handled divorces with second-time married people, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Where both couples were married before.
Absolutely. I have had that. I've had 3 marriages. Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you had very quick marriages where it's like the divorce comes so quickly?
Yes, and some of those people have tried to get annulments, and they didn't fall under one of the caveats of the statute. So they had to be divorced, but I had one where they were literally married 3 months. Oh, wow. And they had a baby, and but they didn't qualify for the annulment, and the baby was born obviously after, but they I had that. I had another case under a year, 9 months. Very short-term marriages sometimes, and typically those ones are not usually litigious, if that makes sense. It's usually both parties wanting out.
And that if you're married for such a short time, there's usually not that much marital property to be disposed of.
Yeah.
So because I remember when I first got married, I lived in an apartment for the first 3 years. Mm-hmm. So you haven't bought a house. I mean, anything can happen, but with those marriages. But that's a good question, Matthew.
It's a very good question.
It means you were paying attention to our broadcast.
Yes.
So anyways, Debbie, as we're winding down the last 4 minutes here.
Yeah.
With Valentine's Day, if everybody's happy and they're getting along fine, if they're not, if you're running into turmoil, and here's what I always found out handling domestics, and it goes back to my high school days. When I was in high school and people started dating, one of the key things that the Christian brothers told us is when you're dating and the date is over, the date is over. Don't try to prolong it. Don't try to, when the date's over, that's it. So that would, I think, go towards that same motto should go towards relationships and marriages. When the marriage is over, it's over. I mean, don't try. Some can be saved, but others are dead in the water. Just go contact the family lawyer. And you know what? You give free consultations, don't you?
I do provide free consultations, so feel free to give me a call if I may provide my phone number.
Yeah, give.
Oh, okay. 312-835-2996. We're happy to set you up with a complimentary consultation. If you would like a longer consultation, we offer longer paid consultations. Happy to go through any and all your fact scenario and try to help you out and see how to protect yourself.
Yes, Debbie has been doing family law. She used to be a prosecutor before you went into private practice. I remember you from Skokie, right?
Correct. I was a Cook County State's attorney, and then I did criminal defense after that for a while.
Yeah, so let's go to her website, Cohen Family Law. I'm sure it's got the phone number and Cohen Family Lawyer, correct?
Correct.
CohenFamilyLawyer.com. There's Debbie. Scroll down. She also has some attachments to our previous episodes, so you guys can watch that. Scroll down.
Almost there.
Almost there.
There you go.
Very nice.
And I did not wear red today.
And she answered a lot of questions that we didn't cover that territory in today's episode. We only got two 24-minute segments, so we got 48 minutes trying to get all this stuff out that's taken her years to learn and years of courtroom experience. Debbie Cohen, one more time with your phone number.
312-835-2996. And thank you so much for having me. I have such a blast here. Thank you.
And thank you for. We got to have you on another future show. Yeah. We're not going to wait till. Sweetest Day. We'll have you on before that. And with this gift from our WRMN studios, Happy Valentine's Day.
Oh my God! Thank you. I got spoiled here, you guys.